All right, this is lecture 4 for World War One. Today we're going to talk about the finish of the war, the finality of it, and kind of how we um, went for peace. And you guys learned a lot about this last year, and we're going to kind of go over it real quickly. The first thing we're going to talk about is Wilson's plan for peace. He creates something called the 14 points. They're not all listed here, obviously, but this is his plan for obtaining and sustaining peace. So it's not just going to be, getting a treaty signed. It's how are we going to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Because people called World War One the war to end all wars. So some of the things he wants to end these secret treaties. Okay, he wants to have freedom of the seas, free trade, reducing militaries, adjusting colonies, self-determination. Self-determination is when countries can decide what kind of government that they want. And then finally, which was his most important and his like kind of his baby, was the League of Nations. If you look at this list, you can kind of see that the causes of the war are all addressed here. So that he doesn't want to allow, or he doesn't want the same sort of things to happen again as what happened to start the war. So Wilson's plan is like almost initially or instantly rejected by Clemenceau and George from France and from England. They wanted to make Germany pay. We didn't suffer the same losses that they suffered over there. Uh, they really felt like they needed retribution from Germany. They needed to make sure that um, that they were, paid back for what they had lost, even though Germany had lost a ton. So only the big four countries were allowed uh, to work out the treaty. Russia and Germany were not invited, so that's going to create some anxiety there as well. So Wilson conceded everything but the League of Nations. He insisted that the League of Nations would be put in the treaty because he felt that this is how you maintain and sustain peace, is that you have a forum to talk about the problems that you have. So if you want to attack someone, you can talk it out as opposed to just going to war. So we have the Treaty of Versailles, and it's a compromise among the Allies. It's met, and it's the Paris Peace Conference, and it's met, at the Palace of Versailles in France. What the treaty does is it has the League of Nations, which Wilson really pushed for, but the rest of his points were rejected. So that's the only thing that he got. Defeated nations lost territory, and those territories would go to the victors. There's a war guilt and reparations clause. So the war guilt, basically Germany had to take responsibility for the war, and the reparations, they had to pay back billions of dollars to these countries, which is going to actually absolutely tank the German economy. Okay, and then the mandate system, the colonies of Germany and the other victorious or the losing nations would go to the victorious countries. And then under the mandate system, these countries would be able to eventually have self-determination, where they would be able to determine their own government um, and kind of be on their own. But in the meantime, they would be watched over by the victorious countries. We have new countries that are created and carved out of the old, like Ottoman Empire and the old um, Austria-Hungarian Empire. So these are the countries in Eastern Europe that are still around today. So you have Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Austria, Czechoslovakia, and Hungary. So yeah, a lot of new countries. And we talk about like lines being drawn arbitrarily. This is a great example of it. They just kind of looked at the map and drew it around mountains and stuff, and here's your country. So it's going to create some upsetting things. Going to make people angry in the future, especially Czechoslovakia, and make Germany angry. So that's World War II. All right. So the problems of the treaty: the U.S. actually rejects the treaty. They did not want to join the League of Nations. It's kind of ironic because that was Wilson's one thing, but Wilson got very ill as the treaty was being signed, and he didn't really have the ability to convince Congress, which was led by the Republicans, that the treaty was a good thing, or that the League of Nations was a good thing. They were more concerned with kind of the warnings of George Washington, where they would be brought into another foreign war. So they thought, like, it happened once, what's stopping it from happening again? And if we're in a league, an alliance with other countries, we're probably going to get brought into a war. Germans are bitter over the war guilt clause, and they couldn't afford to pay the reparations. So this is where you're going to see like people like using wheelbarrows to like paper their walls with wheelbarrows full of money, because money wasn't worth anything. They'd have to take a wheelbarrow of money to go buy bread at the store. So it crippled the German economy. Russia lost too much territory, and because they weren't included in the discussions, they you know, because they pulled out of the war early, they weren't regarded as, necessary for the discussion. So they're upset. So it's going to kind of, they're going to ally with Germany later on, and it's going to cause them to have some tension towards the rest of these world powers. So debate among the treaty. So many Americans were against it, thought it would bring down Europe, so they don't sign it. The New Nations and adjustment of imperialism didn't make sense. They said it's like kind of arbitrarily drawn. The League of Nations is opposed because it threatened our isolationism. We don't want to be dragged into another war, especially when we just fought the war to end all wars. The treaty was never signed, and we signed a separate peace with Germany. All right, so the legacy, it strengthened American military and government. It accelerated our social change. And as I talked about, the war to end all wars and hope to be a cry for humanity to find peace, but it doesn't. And we have a quote here. It says, "It cannot be that 2 million Germans should have fallen in vain. No, we do not pardon. We do not demand vengeance. Or we demand vengeance, sorry." And that's obviously said by Adolf Hitler, who's going to rise up out of this. All right, that's it for World War I.